Hey, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Ben Johnson. Ben, it's great to connect with you, CEO and founder of Particle41, development firm founded by industry veterans that aim to help companies accelerate their initiatives through software development. It's great to connect with you. Appreciate you being on the show today. I always like to start off as a business coach. I work with successful people all over the globe who are stuck and get them unstuck. And so I always like to use this platform to help people get unstuck. Where's a recent place that you've been stuck in business, and how did you get unstuck, Ben?
That's a great question. I think every stage of growth comes with a little more friction.
Yeah.
I think as technologists, we're particularly bad at marketing ourselves. And so, recently I was kind of stuck on just how to talk about the company, how to do my brand message. And then I discovered the story brand framework from Donald Miller, and that really unstuck me. I find frameworks and thought processes and methodologies really help with those sticking points.
Yeah. Business Made Simple, amazing book. And I think, to your point, when you can find a formula that resonates with you, and it kind of balances the art and the science. I see that in when I work with clients all the time. It just makes everything simpler and puts everything into kind of a flow for you. I think that's great. No, I appreciate you sharing that. You mentioned that at each stage of growth there's some friction. What's one thing that you do to kind of recognize the friction, get centered, and then kind of set course?
Sure. So I think for me, it starts with a goal setting framework like OKRs or SMART goals, and elevating your team away from being task oriented. As a leader, you can't manage. We're 100 people globally, so I can't manage all of their tasks. I can barely manage my own. But if I turn folks into being goal oriented rather than task oriented, that's a force multiplier.
Yeah.
And so just subscribing to either SMART goals or OKRs and deciding, what is it that we're trying to accomplish is a huge unsticker. And then talking to the team about, okay, what are the corporate initiatives? What are the things that need to be true in order to make those goals happen?
Yeah.
And then lining those and driving those. So you still get to deliverables, but you get to the deliverables for a reason. And then you can, what's in the content of those deliverables becomes the true value.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's, and being disciplined. And I think I'll add to that, being very specific and being very measurable so you can quantify growth and what people need to do. No, I appreciate you. Thanks for sharing that. I do want to go into a little bit more detail on, when it comes to kind of doing like a little mini business course on goal setting, because when you have companies that, and I work with companies a lot like your company, right, who have a global platform, they've got, 100 plus people. So what are 3 things that companies should be thinking about when it comes to not only setting goals, but inspecting what you expect with goals? So let's just come up with maybe the top 3. What's the first thing?
So when you do a goal setting measure with your team, even your senior most people will put tasks in their goals. They will confuse the two.
Right.
So just watching out for that, knowing that that's going to happen. You also mentioned one, which is making them specific and objective. Super important that there's something to measure. We do this with our fitness every year, right around January, where we say, hey, I want to lose some pounds. But then we don't often translate that into what are the daily habits that are going to get us there.
Right.
And so I think we all can relate to that around personal fitness. But then in a business, do we have those KPIs and those leading indicators that we can kind of go from here's what we want, where we want to be annually, but what does that mean for today or this week?
Right.
And so breaking down some of the larger goals into their smaller components, I think is just a necessary part of that goal setting. So I always say goals equals habits. And And that should be a natural progression of what's going on in a goal setting.
Yeah.
And then checking back frequently, not losing sight of that, where the goals are always above the tasks. We're always going back to the goal rather than getting sucked into the tasks as we're executing. That's easy to do.
Yeah. No. Yeah. What would be one more thing?
One more thing is you're never going to have the data that you think that you wanted. So a lot of your goals will be around how to measure and how to get objective. If you're trying to measure client satisfaction, but you don't have a way of measuring, you don't have an NPS score, then that's going to be your first challenge. So as organizations try to roll out goal setting, they should also invest in data people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's
the success of your goals initiative, if you don't have the folks helping you corral the data and put it at your fingertips. So we need to make data more accessible to ourselves as leaders, or we won't have the objective measures to make goal setting successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to that, two things is, if you don't bring data to the meeting, people just use their own opinion. But there's some data that makes sense and some data that doesn't. You got to know what to extract to use and what to get rid of. So it's like Sam Walton used to go from the boardroom to the diner, have coffee and pie with his customers to see what data meant, what data was important to them, and then go back to the boardroom and prioritize it. So I think that's a really important part. And something interesting you said, goals equal habits. I talk a lot about this too. And the only thing I add into there is every goal is powered by a routine, which is powered by a habit. So, it's really, really important to kind of get into that flow. So no, thanks for sharing that, Ben. Let's talk about you and the business. Technology. You're a development firm, and you're here to you're working with your clients to accelerate initiatives. Software development and data science and things of that nature. So let's talk about this first. What's your ideal client?
So our ideal client is a business that's 10 million to 100 million. We really focus on the mid enterprise. Our ideal client is somebody that maybe did a digital transformation back in 2015 and is like, wow, if I don't do something, I'm going to fall behind.
Yeah.
So we'd love to help with application modernization. We have 4 service categories, or I call them 4 pillars. CTO advisory is one of those pillars. So I love to talk to CEOs just about, hey, what tech are you using? And what tech is available, and is there some low-hanging fruit of options available? Just kind of that stack discussion on both marketing stack, internal management stack, and then of course then your product offering, what you're going to market with. And then we of course have a great group of software developers, cloud engineers, and data scientists. So we do the software development, data, and cloud ops.
Yeah. When it comes to technology, sometimes I think companies, they don't know what technology to use, and then they figure out the technology. But then once they get the technology, it's hard to get people to actually use the technology.
Sure.
Right. And so with a company like yourself, you have 100 people. I'm sure there's technology that you have that you can't, understand why people aren't actually using to its full efficiency and effectiveness. And so how would you suggest that companies, once they get the technology, actually kind of, infuse it into the company so it actually gets used?
Yeah. So I think as leaders, oftentimes we can think of the asset of manpower, like, hey, if we throw bodies at the problem will be solved.
Right.
But we also need to think about the asset of skill. So we're extremely focused on that asset of skill being like, my team needs to be trained in training. And so when we drop behind enemy lines into a client and look at their stack, we want to see where those training gaps are.
Right.
And a lot of times folks are not adopting because they haven't been trained. And there's this asset of manpower, subliminal, unintentional mindset And so we want to look for those key adopters inside the business that can be leveraged as, and train them in training, really focus on, hey, your job is to increase adoption.
Yeah.
What we don't want to do with our internal teammates, those internal client teammates, is we don't want to take the measure of quality away from them. We want to continue to say, hey, you're responsible for quality, quality servicing the customer, quality of delivery. But we also are going to show you the metrics that the automation or the tools, the time savings, and we're going to reward you or incentivize you or reflect on you both the adoption metrics, whatever those happen to be, but also the quality metrics. So we don't want to take away ownership and just say, well, the robot did it or the AI did it or the system did it. We want to keep our people responsible, but also show them, hey, look how much time this thing is saving. That's value for the business. That's helping us sustain our place in the market.
Right. Quantify the ROI. And I just want to highlight, really seeing where the training gaps are, because I agree. A lot of times it's a training issue. I think sometimes companies think, well, we'll train people once, that's it. And then they think that they can implement it. But it really is, training to me is something, especially now with distractions at an all-time high, stress at an all-time high, memory at an all-time low. It's really important to keep things in front of people and training and rinsing and repeating. Thanks for that. I want to kind of go back in time a little bit and talk about mentorship. And I believe that everything is success is never a straight line. And so I like to kind of do these mini life courses, right? So kind of go back in time and share kind of maybe 3 stories or 3 things, you tell me, of somebody who had an impact in your world, how you made a decision to do what you're doing today. I like to leave it kind of open, but what's, to get things kicked off, what's one mentor that had a really big impact on you?
Yeah, I'd love to tell this story. So I had a really great
maybe 3 things they taught you to get you to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. I had a mentor of mine. His name was Henry Wang. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he did an amazing thing where he saw that I was leading a team, but I was trying to get everyone to make me more successful. I was the tech lead, the senior coder on a project, but he noticed that everyone on my team was kind of sitting around waiting for me far too often. He took my keyboard away and he said, I'll give it back to you when your team is functioning and everybody else has things to do to move the project forward. And then you can participate with them. But it was a pivotal lesson that my job as a leader was to help them and make them more productive, not for them to make me more productive. Yeah. And so that looking up and out was a big help. And there's a lot of other ways that he kind of tore me apart and put me back together again. He taught me how to plan a project, how to get everybody coordinated around that. And then how to leverage product people and get them talking to stakeholders. So there's just a lot of coaching and mentoring that he did. And he also put people around me that also trained me. So he was a great mentor and a really good experience of what it meant to go from an individual contributor to a leader.
Yeah, those are such big things that are really powerful. I appreciate you sharing, because I think a lot of times too, those are big things, but they're small things on a consistent basis that mentors do and they layer in. And the power of mentorship is so big. So I appreciate you sharing that. Think community. We always talk about mentorship on this show a lot. It's really important to be a mentor, and it's really important to know when to be the mentee. So that's how we help grow everybody. So I appreciate that. Thanks. So let's talk a little bit more about technology. So we're recording this in 2024, and I read an article in, I think it was 2018 or 19 in the Atlantic. I think it was in the Atlantic. Maybe it wasn't. I can't remember. But it talked about that by the year 2030. This was in 2018-19. By the year 2030, 85% of the Fortune 500 companies that existed in 2018, 19 will not exist in 2030 because technology is going to just change things. And so whether that's right or wrong, that statistic, it seems to me that technology is moving so fast right now. And then layer in AI and VR and everything else that's happening. Where are we going to be? What's your guess and where we're going to be in 6 years, in 2030, when it comes to technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the technology that we've been using is fairly labor intensive, and there's a lot of things that we do as just kind of table stakes in business that are. I'm drawing this dichotomy between the asset of manpower and the asset of skill. And I think we've leveraged the asset of manpower far too much. And if that is your thinking, oh, I'm just going to hire people and they're going to go solve it, then you should be thinking of an AI solution instead. Because if you aren't, your competitors are. And so inevitably, we will need less the asset of manpower and more of the asset
Yeah.
of skill. The example I use is you think of the army, when they need to accomplish something rather than the special forces, like a Green Beret group. They drop behind enemy lines. They train the indigenous folks. And they're able to accomplish things by being trained in training, by being the asset of skill. Whereas the military, they're an occupying force. They just come in and they're very disruptive, and they just kind of own the area, own the territory. And there are probably, if we thought real hard, we could think of some things that are in operations, in call center, that are asset of manpower. But I just think that we're going to be super challenged to leverage AI and the tools that are emerging as a result of AI to think more about asset of skill and less about asset of manpower, or use those use cases for tech. And I think that'll be a powerful way of going about things to try to streamline processes. I don't believe that AI is the end all be all. I think it's a new tool, just like the cloud was a new tool, 5 years ago, that needed to be leveraged in order to move forward. AI will be a tool we need to leverage to move forward now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a tool. It's kind of like it's almost like I look at AI as kind of like an extra employee, an extra set of, a strategic partner in a way. And no, I appreciate you sharing that. Let's do a quick speed round. A book, a TED Talk, an article that's had a big impact on you.
I've been chewing it up. So Atomic Habits, definitely.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Been a love thing. But there's maybe a less known one is Sell Like Crazy from Sarvi Subi. I just had to look up on my bookshelf. But Sell Like Crazy, just a really great breakdown of how modern marketing works, how lead gen in the modern world works. And it's worth, that book is worth a couple of highly paid digital consultants like that will get you kickstarted. A few months ago, I just really didn't have the sales and marketing muscle. And from Donald Miller's works and that book, I feel like I've plugged into the matrix where I can at least move my strategies forward. Yeah.
And it's called Sell Like Crazy.
Sell Like Crazy. It's a bright red book. Sabri Subi is the author. Great. Just a go-getter of a guy. Yeah. Real
all right. Good. It's amazing. I read a ton. And what I love about this podcast is I always somehow find a new book that I haven't read or heard of. So I'm gonna order it today. So I appreciate that. Sure. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
Best piece of wisdom I have ever received. Perfect is the enemy of good, right? Like we just got to make progress and move forward. Quality is super important. Don't get me wrong. But perfect can often get in the way. In technology, building the perfect system often would compete with accomplishing the business goal. So we want to find that straight line between A and B. What is the business goal, and solutioning the right level of precision to hit the business goal, I think, is really important.
Yeah, that's great. Also, great. Last question. Finish a sentence. One thing everybody can do to increase the training in their company so people actually use more of the technology that they have is?
Write SOPs. Just make sure you got the SOP. You got something there for them to go to. What is the process?
Right.
A lot of folks are just not delighting not leveraging that tool of an SOP. Let's just get it written down, get it spud out. And with AI, you talk to it and it'll write it for you. So there's no excuse.
Yeah. No excuse. I love it. Ben, this was great. I really enjoyed this talk. I appreciate your, a lot of times technology people can make things sound really complicated. You break things down to the simple, which I think is an art that everybody needs to get better at today. A great book I'll share with you that you may like is Smart Brevity, which is by the founders of Axios. It's an outstanding book. You will love it, and it will go with everything that you're talking about today. I think community, it's really important. I always like to extract something as a business coach who works with successful people who are stuck. I get them unstuck. Something I see companies get stuck in all the time is they don't have the proper training within their companies. It's kind of like a one and done or like a couple and done, and they're trying to figure out why people aren't using the technology. And like Ben said, and I agree with you, Ben, it's typically it's a training gap. It's an internal training gap, and it's a place where look at your business and see what technology could have a stronger ROI, and then rewind, reverse engineer some training that you can drip out that's easily digestible to get your companies and your people to start using it more effectively. Ben, this is great. Tell people one more time where they can connect with you and your ideal client.
Yeah, Ben at particle41.com. Love to just get an email from you. And I'd love to work with CEOs of businesses 10 to 100 million that are looking to stay ahead of the curve and compete at the market's demand pace.
It's great. And I think community, you can reach, give me your website one more time.
Particle41.com.
All right. And you can reach me, Think Community, at jondwoskin.com. Ben, this was great. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Stay on for a sec.
Cool. All right.